Driving a car so small it looks like it belongs in a toy store, yet it's conquering one of the world's most advanced economies and saving its owners thousands of dollars every year while doing it? Sounds impossible, right? But here's the twist that'll blow your mind. These tiny machines aren't just transportation, they're a financial revolution wrapped in metal and rubber, and they've quietly redefined what it means to be smart with your money in a country that's mastered efficiency like no other. If you've ever felt trapped by car payments, insurance bills, and gas prices that make your wallet cry, then what you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about owning a vehicle. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll understand why these miniature marvels might just be the most brilliant automotive strategy ever conceived. And trust me, you'll want to hit that like button and subscribe because this story gets wild. Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. Now, let's talk about Japan's kei cars. And before you think this is just another car story, let me tell you something that'll make you sit up straight. These vehicles represent a 70-year experiment in financial genius that saved Japanese families literally billions of dollars, while the rest of the world was busy building bigger, thirstier, more expensive machines. But here's where it gets interesting, and I mean really interesting. Picture this, it's 1949 and Japan is absolutely devastated. Their economy is shattered, their cities are in ruins, and most people can barely afford food, let alone a car. The average Japanese citizen is looking at the American dream of big, chrome-covered automobiles and thinking, that's completely insane for us right now. So what did they do? Did they give up on motorization entirely? No, they did something so clever, so audacious, that it would eventually become a cultural phenomenon that defines their entire nation. They created a category of vehicles so small, so efficient, so perfectly tailored to their economic reality that it would become the backbone of Japanese mobility for generations. But here's the kicker, and this is where the financial brilliance really shows itself. The Japanese government looked at this situation and said, we need to make car ownership accessible, but we also need to make it financially sustainable. So they invented tax breaks, insurance discounts, and regulatory advantages that made these tiny cars not just affordable to buy, but incredibly cheap to own. We're talking about vehicles that cost half as much to insure, require minimal parking fees, and consume fuel like they're sipping it through a cocktail straw. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mark, that's great for post-war Japan, but what does this have to do with us today? Hold that thought, because what happened next is where this story transforms from historical curiosity into a masterclass in financial strategy that every car owner needs to understand. Fast forward to the 1960s and 70s, and Japan's economy is starting to boom. People have more money, the country is rebuilding, and you'd think these tiny kei cars would disappear as people upgraded to bigger vehicles, right? Wrong. Instead, something fascinating happened that economists still study today. The kei car became embedded in Japanese culture not despite the economic growth, but because of how it enabled that growth. Think about it like this. While American families were spending 20, 30, even 40% of their income on car payments, insurance, and fuel, Japanese families with kei cars were spending maybe 10 to 15%. And that difference, that extra cash flow, it went into savings, into education, into starting businesses, into building the economic miracle that made Japan the powerhouse it became. This wasn't just about transportation anymore. This was about financial freedom disguised as a cute little car. And here's where your mind should be exploding right now. The average kei car owner in Japan saves approximately $3,000 to $5,000 per year compared to owning a regular-sized vehicle. And we're not even counting the reduced parking costs, the lower toll fees on highways, and the fact that these things barely depreciate because demand stays so consistently high. Over a decade of ownership, we're talking about $30,000 to $50,000 in savings, which for most families is the difference between financial stress and financial security, between being trapped in debt and having options in life. But wait, there's more to this story, and it gets even more fascinating when you look at the design philosophy behind these machines. Because here's what the Japanese figured out that Detroit completely missed. Size isn't luxury, efficiency is luxury. Freedom isn't about horsepower, it's about low operating costs. Status isn't about having the biggest vehicle on the road, it's about being smart enough not to waste money on things you don't need. The kei car regulations are brilliantly specific. Maximum length of 11.2 feet, maximum width of 4.9 feet, maximum height of 6.6 feet, and engine displacement capped at 660 cc. These aren't arbitrary numbers, they're carefully calculated dimensions that force manufacturers to innovate, to squeeze every ounce of utility out of every inch of space, to make engines so efficient they'll run for 300,000 miles without barely touching your bank account. And the result? You get vehicles that can park perpendicular to the curb because they're so short, that can navigate streets barely wider than a sidewalk, that cost less to maintain than most people spend on coffee in a year. Now, here's where the suspense really builds, because you're probably wondering, if these cars are so brilliant, why don't we have them everywhere? Why isn't America, with all its financial struggles and car debt problems, embracing this solution? The answer is going to frustrate you, but it's important. It comes down to culture, regulation, and the uncomfortable truth that the American automotive industry built its entire business model on the opposite philosophy. Bigger is better, more power is more freedom, and financing a $40,000 truck over 7 years is somehow considered normal. The Japanese looked at transportation as a utility, something that should serve your life without dominating your budget. Americans, influenced by decades of marketing and suburban sprawl, bought into the idea that your car defines your worth, and that bigger vehicles mean bigger success. But here's the urgent part, the part that should make you pay attention right now. That American model is crumbling. Car loan debt in the United States has exceeded $1.5 trillion. The average monthly payment is over $700. Insurance costs are skyrocketing, and people are literally trapped in financial obligations that prevent them from saving, investing, or building wealth. Meanwhile, the key car philosophy, this 70-year-old Japanese innovation, is looking more relevant than ever. And before you say, "But Mark, those tiny cars wouldn't work in America," let me challenge that assumption hard, because here's what's really happening. Urban areas are growing, parking is becoming impossible, gas prices fluctuate wildly, and younger generations are actively rejecting the car-centric lifestyle their parents embraced. The conditions that made key cars successful in Japan, dense populations, expensive parking, high fuel costs, these conditions are increasingly becoming American reality in major cities. The resistance isn't practical, it's psychological. We've been conditioned to think we need more than we actually need. Now, let me take you deeper into the financial mechanics, because this is where the true genius reveals itself. A typical key car in Japan costs between $8,000 and $15,000 new, compared to $35,000 for the average new car in America. Insurance runs about $300 to $600 per year, compared to $1,500 to $2,000 in the US. Fuel economy averages 50 to 70 miles per gallon, compared to 25 to 30 for most American vehicles. Maintenance costs are minimal because the engines are simple, parts are cheap, and the vehicles are designed for longevity over performance. Add it all up, and you're looking at total cost of ownership that's less than a third of what Americans pay, which means key car owners in Japan literally have twice as much disposable income for everything else in life. This isn't just smart, this is transformative. But here's the cliffhanger that should keep you glued to this screen. What if I told you that Japan's key car strategy is actually under threat right now, and the forces trying to kill it reveal everything about the tension between corporate profits and consumer well-being? Because as Japanese manufacturers have gone global, they have realized they make way more profit selling you a $30,000 SUV than a $10,000 key car, and there's increasing pressure to phase out the tax advantages and regulatory benefits that make these tiny cars so attractive. The Japanese government is facing lobbying from major automakers who want to modernize the market, which is corporate speak for getting people to spend more money. This battle is happening right now, and its outcome will determine whether this brilliant model of affordable transportation survives or gets sacrificed on the altar of profit margins. And that brings us to the final act of this story, the part where everything comes together and you understand why this matters so much beyond just cars. The key car isn't really about automotive engineering, it's about a fundamental choice societies make about what they value. Do you value efficiency over excess? Do you prioritize financial freedom over status symbols? Do you design your economy around what people need or what corporations want to sell them? Japan answered these questions one way 70 years ago and created a system that's kept millions of families financially stable while still giving them mobility and freedom. America answered differently, and now we're drowning in car debt, struggling with traffic congestion, and watching people sacrifice their financial futures for depreciating assets they park in driveways 95% of the time. The lesson here isn't that everyone should drive a key car, it's that we need to seriously reconsider our relationship with vehicle ownership and ask ourselves some uncomfortable questions about whether our choices are actually serving us. Because here's the ultimate truth that the automotive industry doesn't want you to realize. You have way more power than you think. Every purchase is a vote for the kind of market you want to exist. And if enough people started demanding smaller, cheaper, more efficient vehicles, the industry would have no choice but to provide them. The Japanese proved this is possible. They showed us a different path, and while that path might not transfer perfectly to American conditions, the principles absolutely do. Simplicity saves money, efficiency creates freedom, and smart financial decisions compound over time into life-changing wealth. So as you sit here watching this video, probably thinking about your own car payment, your insurance bill, your last trip to the gas station, I want you to ask yourself, what would your life look like with an extra $3,000 to $5,000 per year? What could you do with that money? How would it change your options, your security, your future? That's the real story of Japan's kei cars. Not that they're small or cute or quirky, but that they represent a conscious choice to prioritize financial wisdom over everything else. And that choice has defined a nation in ways that go far beyond transportation. If this video opened your eyes to a different way of thinking about cars and money,
then smash that like button. Subscribe to AUTOSAYS because we're diving deep into automotive economics and cultural stories you won't find anywhere else. And drop a comment telling me whether you think the kei-car philosophy could ever work in your city. The future of transportation is being written right now, and the question is whether we'll learn from Japan's 70-year experiment in brilliance or keep making the same expensive mistakes. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest vehicles carry the biggest lessons.